What's up, fellow filmmakers and photographers? Today I'm in beautiful Maui watching the sunset, but today I want to give you 5 reasons why this little Sony RX0 Mark II is my new all-time favorite travel camera. Reason number 1 why the Sony RX0 Mark II is my favorite travel camera of 2019 is no, not the size, because I know that's what you're thinking. It's the fact that it can actually shoot really cinematic footage. In fact, that little B-roll segment that you just watched was shot half on the RX0 Mark II and half on my GH5, an expensive DSLR with an expensive lens. These two cameras match up so well, and in a minute I'm going to show you which shots were shot on the RX0 Mark II and which were on the GH5. There's other cameras of similar size on the market like the GoPro Hero 7 or the Osmo Action by DJI, but neither of those cameras comes close to creating the level of cinematic footage that the RX0 Mark II does. I love that I can sprinkle shots in that I got with the RX0 Mark II, a super tiny little camera that fits in your pocket, with my big bulky DSLR footage, and it looks the same, just as cinematic. It's insane. So without further ado, bet you weren't expecting this. Yeah, I'm home back now in Northern California, not in Hawaii anymore. But anyways, without further ado, I'm gonna play that exact same edit you just watched, but this time I'm gonna label which shots I used the RX0 Mark II to shoot and which shots I used my GH5 to shoot. So as you can see, you can totally get away with sprinkling shots from this camera into your edits with your higher end DSLRs. In my opinion, I think there's 3 main reasons why the footage from the RX0 Mark II looks so much more cinematic than say a GoPro or the Osmo Action. Number 1, the Zeiss glass that comes with it. It looks absolutely stunning. Number 2, the focal length. Both the GoPro and the Osmo Action have that kind of wide angle look that immediately you know you're looking at some GoPro footage. Well, the RX0 has a 24mm lens, and after you consider the crop, that's 35mm equivalent, which is standard for film. And number 3 is the high frame rate options. I believe you can shoot all the way up to 960 FPS, although I only shot up to 240 frames per second in full 1080 HD. I don't have a whole lot to say about the second thing I love about this camera because it is pretty obvious, but it's its size. I often find myself in situations where I didn't bring my camera for whatever reason. Maybe I'm in a store and I don't want to look awkward vlogging, or I'm on a hike and I'm already carrying a ton of stuff and I just didn't want to bring my camera, like my big DSLR. Well, now I could just throw the little RX0 Mark II in my pocket and get footage that will pair up nicely with my final edit in whatever it is that I'm filming. And you know what? That's not to mention this tiny camera has a flip out screen, which definitely has its pros and cons. I'm not super fond of it, but I still like it. I will get to that later in the video. And reason number 3 why the RX0 Mark II is my new favorite travel camera is because this camera is waterproof. The RX0 Mark II is jungle proof. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. Yes, other cameras of this size are also waterproof, but I think the footage and photos I get out of this camera are similar to my RX100 Mark V, which look way better, way more cinematic than, say, a GoPro. If I had my GH5 or my RX100, would not be doing so well right now. Also, scoop my trash bag, camera bag setup because the bag I have is not waterproof. Let's put it this way. If this camera was not waterproof, I would have to use water housing on my RX100 Mark V to have a somewhat compact and affordable setup that can achieve this kind of footage underwater. All right, reason number 4 why the RX100 is my new favorite travel camera is because it has a mic jack. I mean, the RX100 Mark V that I have doesn't even have a mic jack. That thing costs just as much as the RX0 Mark II used. This is an audio test for the internal microphone. I'm not sure how it sounds, but I think it's gonna sound all right, especially compared to a GoPro and for how small of a camera this is. All right, now I'm using the Shure Lens Hopper VP83. I'm just kind of hanging on to it on the side. It's right here, connected. It's gonna be interesting to see how these compare in terms of sound. And reason number 5 why the RX0 is my new favorite travel camera is because of its price tag. I know what you're thinking. That's almost twice the price of a GoPro, which kind of looks like the same type of camera, right? Well, for comparison, a Sony a6300 is $850 brand new. Plus, if you're gonna take this thing in the water, you'd have to spend another $500 on water housing. So sure, you can go and buy a GoPro for about half the price, but with the GoPro, you're really only getting one type of look. In my opinion, it's a very specialty camera that only really excels in action. The RX0 Mark II is more of a cinematic, high quality, professional looking camera, whereas the GoPro will give you stable shots in action and it's more durable in my opinion. So I'm sure you're thinking, this camera sounds too good to be true, there has to be cons. There definitely are cons and I'm gonna go through them rapid fire style right now. Yes, that tiny little flip out screen is nice to have and it does have tons of settings that you can adjust from it, but it can be really hard to see the screen and navigate its settings since it's so small. Also, the camera overheats pretty quickly when it's hot out, especially shooting in 4K. It's really cool that it has this flip out screen, but because it keeps overheating, it gets super dark to the point where I can barely see the screen and then just shuts off. So sometimes I can't even tell that it's off because the screen just gets so dark right before it turns off. So when it was any hotter than like 90 degrees and I was in the sun, I practically couldn't film, which was really annoying. This camera's tiny. You know what else that means? The battery is super tiny as well. And you know what that means? Yes, it dies really, really fast. This thing I feel like dies in less than an hour of me using it. If you plan to go out and shoot for a few hours or maybe a day at a time, I would bring at least 3 or 4 batteries with you. This one's kind of just a personal opinion for me, but I don't think that this camera has a wide enough focal length for vlogging. I feel like it's a little bit too zoomed in and it kind of chops my head off. I would have to put on an aftermarket lens kit, which you can buy, but of course that's just more money. These last 2 cons could be a deciding factor for a lot of people, so I do want to emphasize them. Number 1, the stabilization on this camera that's built in isn't amazing. It does have internal stabilization, but it comes nowhere close to like a GoPro 7. And I definitely wouldn't replace that camera for that reason. The final con that I find the most annoying and could be the decision maker for a lot of people is that it does not have a continuous autofocus in video or photo mode. What I mean by that is basically every shot you take, you have to hold that shutter button down halfway to get the focus and then you can hit record. Unfortunately, especially when I was filming underwater, I missed a lot of shots because of this, where it would focus incorrectly and I would totally miss an amazing shot. So yeah, all of these cons are kind of annoying, but again, this camera is so small and it's pushing such professional features that the pros massively outweigh the cons for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video at all, got anything out of it, learned something, please give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment if you have any questions, and hit that subscribe button for more because I can't wait to see you in the next one. Peace.